Welcome, everyone. I'm Chris Dobbin, and welcome to the Amplify Your Brand series, the ultimate live in building your brand in today's digital age. Along with my friend and fellow colleague on the screen there, you can see Samoa. We're here to share experience and help you take your brand to the next level. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a person with a personal brand, or a marketing professional, we're here to help you with practical insights and strategies that will amplify your brand and make you stand out in this digital landscape that we are in. So please get ready, take notes, and put what you learn into action today, because by the end of this live stream, you'll have a clear roadmap of how to build the brand that truly resonates with your target audience. So thank you for joining us today, and let's find another way to amplify your brand. And today's topic we are going to cover is, it's going to be called ChromaTalk. We're going to unveil the power of colors in branding. We're going to unravel the profound impact the color wield over our emotions, our perceptions, and the decision-making processes. And I'm going to hand it back to Sim here to just bring us home onto the landing page here of before we take off again on why color is important.
Colors are an agreed system of values that we intrinsically learn from very early on in our lives to help us decide, make decisions from little things, whether or not to do certain things like cross the road and we see the green, or whether or not we want to touch an animal, because nature encodes these values as well in some levels. So certain animals have very bright colors, and usually bright colors in nature means stay away from. So today we're going to talk about the human component of agreed values we've built around colors, how they shape our emotions, and how brands can use those to reinforce a message.
Yes, exactly. And I've got a feeling like this will be a topic we may revisit a few times because of the breadth of the situation of how much it is ingrained into branding. But we're going to cover a fair chunk of it today. So please join us as we go through this next stage of things. But what I'm going to bring up on the screen here is our P8 system and what this is all applied to. And even our P8 system uses colors in a way because of the process as we take through. And I guess, Sim, obviously we use yellow, blue, magenta, and green. And as you highlighted on, yellow we use in our P8 program for
liking. It's the first stage of a relationship, a customer journey, an observation, a user interface. We usually come across something, and we either like it or not, and that first step of liking leads us to the next.
Yep. And look, we could work through all the colors, but obviously then trust and action and then growth are these things. And that's sort of, again, the process we take people through when we get into this. So please, if anything you see today really gets your interest and you're not sure how to apply this to your brand, whether it's a new brand or a brand that's existing, please reach out to us. We'd love to apply our P8 program to what you do, the P8 framework there, and see if it can actually get your brand where you need to go and amplify it to the level you need to go. So you've got a purple factoid you want to talk about here.
We just mentioned that colors have emotional values, and from very early ages in our human history, they began doing that because in the very specific example of purple was a color that was very hard to reproduce at the time. And it was only available through nature, through a sea slug, a sea snail. And producing the color purple meant that one would have the resources to go and get sea snails and extract the color purple from them to create an ink with which to dye certain vests. Because this was such a labor-intensive, resource-costly process, that privilege of wearing purple and displaying it for the public was reserved for the emperors, for the royalty, for the people with the economic means to do so.
Yes, so again, the history of colors and things like that is quite fascinating. So let's get into the next part of this, which actually we're going to talk about one other thing. So I'll go back to here, the factoid. It's not there, but you were going to talk about Eskimos and white.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So we see there a fade into white, and that's because the second factoid, it's very interesting. We're used to color naming the color white, but there are two interesting facets to the white. White, depending on the process that we encounter it in, and we'll go over the processes later on today, um, is not just one color, but actually the addition of all colors. The frequencies of colors actually produce the white, and white in a specific reference and culture has a number of assigned meanings. In the Eskimo culture, white is not just white. White has 30 variations, about 30 variations, and different levels of naming conventions for those whites. If you think that, or if you place yourself in the Arctics and you live in the snow, cold weather year round, you'll quickly understand how white is not just one convention, one name, and one assigned meaning. It has different thicknesses, it has different temperatures, even behaviors, because it dictates how people are able to go out to sea, perforate ice to fish from their homes, build igloos out of them. So white is a charged color in the Eskimo culture. That's the random factoid that I wanted to include in this intro.
There we go. So we'll move on to when it comes to branding, the fact that we have, I guess, 3 levels of branding that work in what we're doing. So do you want to talk through what they are?
Yeah, basically categorization of colors. And we're not going to get into the tertiary, but so that everybody listening to this today understands the first two. The primary colors palette is basically those colors that can be created by mixing, cannot be created by mixing any other colors together. They serve as the building blocks for all others stemming from them. We're talking about the red, we're talking about the yellow, we're talking about the blue. With that, and we start mixing a little bit of red and the blue. We have purple, we mix red and yellow, and we have orange, we mix a bit of yellow and blue, we have green. These are the secondary colors, the purple, the orange, and the green. And from then on, if you keep subdividing and mixing these subdividers, you will get to tertiary colors. And this is important just so you understand what primary colors are, secondary colors are, and how they tie into the next step of the process we're about to go into.
Yeah. So I think that's fascinating what you just highlighted there, that the 3 colors that we start with lead to, I guess, 3 more colors. And then actually the tertiary colors are all the other colors we generally associate with. So the fact that, like, when you say you like a certain color, it's actually usually sitting in the tertiary level. It's not actually in those primary ones, but it's founded from that primary color. So yeah. And that's for everyone out there today, this is not a science show. So we're not getting we're not going to get into the dark side of the moon and the prisms and what light shades go into things. We're not going to actually do any of those kind of experiments. We're just talking about how this applies to your brand and the history of that, where it comes into play, because we think it's really relevant for a lot of our clients. And I think you may bring this up, but I may jump the gun on this one and just say that just because you like a football team or a particular color, it really doesn't mean that that's why you should be using that in your brand. And I think we've talked about that in previous episodes of what we've talked about. But just because you personally like a color doesn't mean that it's right for your brand.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
You should enjoy wearing the colors of your brand and looking at it and things like that, but you technically don't have to love it and be passionate about it and stick out your entire wardrobe.
Exactly. Adopt it and let it represent your brand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So moving on to what I was just touching on with all these different colors that come out of this. So talk us through what we're seeing on the screen here, where we're talking, what is it? There's 12 colors.
It's basically, the basic representation of colors displayed in a palette. And when you start looking at these colors and their associated meanings, you can understand how color then becomes your ally when conveying or representing your brand in a specific way. And I like to use the royal blue as a very typical generic example, because everything usually associated with blue will have to do with government agencies and institutions. It will have to do with army. It will have to do with something that conveys a lot of security, trust, and responsibility. This is not by chance. And again, it's the easy fallback color to explain how colors and emotions are deeply tied together. So we have an entire range of colors, and these colors are just a very, very tiny amount of the total spectrum.
That's right.
And this is the visible spectrum, because then, and again, we're not going to go into the rabbit's deep end today, but if you understand that these colors form certain specific messages, you can adopt them and modulate your brand in certain chromatic decisions that affect your audience in the way that they pertain to these values associated. And I won't read it out loud now because it's of no use. You can read it yourself. But if you want to keep a quick reference for yourself, now is a good time to do a screenshot of what you're seeing. And with that, we'll jump into the next section.
Yeah, actually, well, I know you've just given us a nice segue in there, but just people sort of sometimes don't really take total grasp of the color and some of the meanings behind them. And I guess some people might now look at what we're seeing on the screen here and look at their brand and realize that either they've got a misalignment there, and maybe they need to not just get rid of that color or things like that, but maybe they need to introduce another color to complement it or bring it out in what they do. Or if they've got products in their product line that they look at these color schemes as maybe those color products should be given a place in that color scheme, because some of the words I'm seeing on the screen there really do resonate with certain things that your brand or your product or your service or the things that you do on a day-to-day basis should kind of, and we talk about this in previous episodes, where keywords or emotive words that represent you, values, morals, motivations, things like that, they should come into play here. Because if you said that you want to, as I said with black there at the front there, if you want authority and discipline and elegance, then black is a color you need to introduce. Where at the other end of the scale, if you're trying to get excitement, energy, and passion, then red, you go down that pathway. And I've picked those two colors because I'm a Bomber supporter, so black and red. So clearly it resonates with me. So that's what I want to go. Jason.
I'll leave it at that because I know that Essendon is not doing particularly well at the moment. So on to the next color.
On to the next one. So color system. So again, with everything you touched on about the purple, right? As technology has changed over the years, so has the color schemes that sit behind everything we do. So talk about them on the screen here, the systems.
Yes. So to simplify things in terms that anybody can understand, we have three main systems for color registry. And these are mostly visual. We have the RGB, which is composed by the red, green, and blue, therefore the acronym RGB. And this is everything that pertains to digital. If you look close enough on your TV, you will find the basic cells of color being constituted of the three colors that I just mentioned. The red, the green, and the blue are repeated in thousands throughout your area of your screen. And this displays light systems to convey the colors in different intensities. And they obviously adopt very quickly the intensity of the red, the combination with green, combination with blue, to represent a color in a pixel. So that is one of the systems. It's an additive systems that works by light. And basically what I said earlier, when you add all the different wavelengths of natural light, the eye perceives white rather than each one of those colors that is mixed in. When no light is present, the absence of light is therefore complete black. So this is one of the systems and is mostly digital. It exists in our phones, it exists in our smartwatches, it exists on screens. And this is very, very different from the next color system up next, which is the CMYK. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K is the color that is represented by black. And it's basically for everything printing and physical. Now, why do these two systems exist? Very simply, because what you perceive on a screen in light cannot possibly be replicated by printing something, which is why sometimes there could be lots of discussion and argumentation when somebody comes to a printer to pick up a job that looked amazingly bright on their screen at home, and then on the brochure, it causes a disconnect. This is why the systems of colors need to be intertwined in such a way that what you see on screen at home will match as close as possibly with the produced output in print. Again, this is very important, and we're going to see some statistics that speak to the importance of what I'm just focusing right now. These are the two main systems of colors. What we see on screen there under PMS is the international agreed coloring system. Pantone matching system is nothing more than a standardized system of ink colors between printers. That means exactly the same combination, independently of country, independently of time of day, independently of light in the location. So why do these colors exist? Because usually you will have in any printer, the basic premise of a printer is to have 4 colors combined differently. And again, they can produce a different result when you take a digital file to a printer and they have a calibration on their machine. So the same values on the machine in our local printer may not be the exact calibration and the same exact output that is going to be produced by the printer in the next city over. However, the Pantone matching system is an international table of color values that always means your color picked in Pantone references is going to print exactly the same, whether you do it here or you do it in Norway or you do it in the local printer or wherever it goes. So basically, there are 2 color systems, the digital and the physical. If you want to get really precise with the physical, then you use the Pantone matching system. As well, be prepared to pocket out a few more dollars because that's going to cost you to use those specific colors.
Yeah, exactly. And big examples of companies that use this is obviously we've got the purple that Cadbury use. That is particular purple that they own. McDonald's with their yellow and reds, they have one. BP with their green, they have one with that. And there are many, many other examples of things that we could talk about all day on. But when corporates get to a certain level, they want to own a particular color, so that it seems ridiculous. Like most of us won't notice the difference between a purple Cadbury and purple for Milka, the chocolate, so purpley color, right? So, but Cadbury care because they don't want Milka being a brand that's purple with a cow on it to be mistaken as a Cadbury product. So it's just one of those things that when you get to a certain level of your branding, color can be a defining thing. Go.
The background context to why Chris mentioned specifically Cadbury and Milka is because this dispute was taken to courts over who could own and trademark the color and what that color had in terms of combination. And then once that establishment was made of what those colors looked like, the other company could not use it. So I agree, it gets to the ridiculous because it's like saying people own words or corporations own words. It shouldn't be allowed, but that's to express the level of importance of colors. If a multinational corporation is willing to fight tooth and nail in court and spend millions on trademarking a color, you better believe there is a meaning and a profit behind that color.
Yep. And over the years, we're talking decades now that I've been working on print jobs, even though the technology has improved and the techniques have improved, I still have situations where the weather on the day affects the printing. And so a client that printed stuff in summer got a certain royal blue, and then when they did it in winter or a colder day, they ended up with a lighter blue and they weren't happy with it, or I think another one was a tanny color that I've had problems with. So, but the reason for this was they weren't using PMS; they were using CMYK.
Yeah.
And even worse, I think one of them was using, like you said earlier, that RGB approach where they were like, on my screen, it looks like this. And so I had to physically take my laptop over and show them, like, here's my screen, here's your screen. Notice the difference in color just in our screens.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yes.
so it is interesting. Yeah.
Very good example there. Even absorption rates of stock, meaning paper, on different days mean different outputs. So that's exactly what Chris brought up. And I remember myself working at a print house during the summer in the south of Portugal, in the Algarve. For those who know, it is a very warm summer over there. And they would have problem not just producing, but having the ink dry in time for deliveries to happen. And many times it happened that when they get piled up, brochures over brochures in thousands of quantity, they would be picked up and the ink would sometimes smear a little bit because it was a rush job and the ink didn't have time to properly dry.
And we haven't talked about this today, but people are colorblind as well. And we're not going to go into that in today's thing. But I have had a business partner in the past who was colorblind, and we only discovered it because I literally was holding something up in front of him and going, see this green and next to that red? And he's like, no, I don't see the green. What are you talking about? I can see brown and I think it's grey, a grey and a red. And so we actually discovered he was colorblind in that conversation. So yeah, fun and games. So, all right. So that's the three color systems that worldwide are known for. And hopefully, again, if you're into this kind of thing or you haven't been into this kind of thing, maybe we've opened your mind to the importance of choosing the right system for your brand. Now, some statistics brands should pay attention to. So what have we got here? We've got 80% color dominance is in brand recognition. So I guess we just talked about that with Gabri, a great example.
Yeah. So what that statistic speaks to is to the importance of having one dominant color. This is your primary brand color for which it is recognized and identified. The brands get recognized up to 80% when they have a very clear, consistent use of this dominant color. And this is hugely important. The second statistic pertains to the brand recognition with this consistent application across platforms. So we just talked about color systems, RGB and CMYK, because what shows up on your screen sometimes is impossible to replicate when things go to production. And this happens more typically with very specific fluorescent type shades of green, certain blues, those hues that you see up on your screen and they look incredibly energetic. They have no way of physically being reproduced onto a print. And when that break happens, brands suffer. So if you pick a color that is more close to screen and print, then your brand gains up to 23% more recognition out of this consistency.
I'm interested in the third one here.
The third one, 33. 333. Look up the angel number because that's a very specific number that I come across every day. And I'll leave it at that. 33%, up to 33% of revenue increase. Again, by simply using the brand colors with consistency. This applies to being savvy and consistently sticking to your brand colors, especially in what concerns everyday applications. We've all heard marketers say, you need to create social media posts that are lively and exciting and colorful and whatnot. But the downside of that approach is that if you lose consistency and break recognition with your brand, you are cutting yourself off from the possibility of having up to those 33% of increase in your revenue.
Yeah. And just on that, like we know when you see something in a social post that isn't on brand, even if it's a small local business, it's just trust in that brand goes a little bit. You don't even notice you're thinking it, but you're thinking it. It's just subtle things like that.
My friend, I buy a lot of supplements online, as you would know. And every now and again, I come across a post of a company I haven't heard before, a brand that sells supplements. Usually it doesn't have a brick and mortar shop. And the way they have their colors used across their feed makes me wonder immediately, are they even legit? I want to check for testimonials. I want to see if they have engagement of people who have bought from them before. I want to go into their feeds and test the veracity of what they're saying, aka trust is absolutely crucial in these situations. And like Chris mentioned, social posts that don't make use of that brand recognition by consistency lose a lot of possibility.
And we had this conversation yesterday about the uprising of Canva as a tool for
Yes.
a lot of like things. I'll just say things in design. Well, it doesn't matter whether it's print or social or whatever, but it's fantastic that they give the power to somebody to have these templates. But generally what happens is the people really can't understand brand. So they'll take the pretty flowered one that's pink and yellow and all that, even though their brand is blue and green, for example, right? So they go with the pretty one that looks pink and yellow, and it's got new fonts on it and all sorts of stuff. And they'll post that on their social media and they'll put it out there and they'll say, something motivational, whatever it is. And yes, okay, you've got that emotive side to it, but as soon as that post disappears, they're going to forget you.
Yeah.
Because they're going to take the message, but they're not going to remember your brand because the colors weren't there or the fonts weren't there to reinforce that that was you who posted that message. And I just find that a lot of people out there that are using Canva as a tool to understand that even if you are going to use it, go into the color schemes and make sure you apply the colors of your brand to that, because there is a brand kit now inside Canva and it does allow you to apply that. We were talking about this yesterday. And it's even if it's not using the right graphics, at least have the right color schemes. Just make sure that it's using those colors to your advantage, not to your disadvantage. But anyway, we could rant all day about Canva. 85% of logo color is in impact on the perception. So consumers consistently cite color as a primary reason for choice. So we're going to get into I think, across industries in the next slide. But the simple fact is that a color can make a point of difference for you, but it also can make a impact for you depending on the industries you're in and things like that. And I'll let you talk to this as we get into the next slide. I guess maybe we should just run there.
Jump right over.
Color tendencies across industries. So I'll let you talk to the screen, my friend.
Yes. So blue, as we mentioned before, is a deeply associated with the emotion of trust and confidence and reliability. And therefore, it would make sense that it's so popular across the finance and technology industries, because let's face it, they deal in big numbers. Technology it can be very quickly a very big beast, and what you do on your computer could have repercussions in the digital world that we are more living in. Therefore, blue is one of the popular choices for brands in finance and technology. Likewise, green is usually associated with health, eco-friendly, organic, and wellness naturally. So basically, this association is very easy to make, and we all make it by conditioning. We look around us, we see trees, and we see green. So therefore, we associate it with the eco, with the health, with the organic.
That's right.
And we finish off this particular section in tendencies with the red. The red is a color for action. And it's very used in food and beverages industry. Think McDonald's, think KFC, think most famous brands within the food. And I'll call it food for now for ease of convention. The entertainment industry, and then the last one.
Oops. Sorry, it's away from me. It was automotive.
All right. And the automotive. Think Ferrari, think Ducati. Think all the shouting cars and the sports cars that we see every day on the roads, or not every day, but when we see them, we notice them. These are the industries that use red because of the power associated to red.
That's right. Now, what's interesting about this conversation is those colors you've just highlighted. Um, 20 years ago, and there is a quite a famous yeah, document that's got all the brands of the world on it in a color scheme, and you'll
Yes,
see
yes,
the
yes.
majority of it's red, then sorry, blue, then it gets into reds, and then gradually it gets down to the yellows and things like that.
Yeah.
And then you've got the outskirt black and white ones. What's changing in the last decade or so because of social media and online and the ability to get online is that some of those colors are now like people are automatically going for what you brought up on the screen before. They will choose pink instead of red, or they'll choose a lime green in their industry because, again, they want the personality of the color to resonate with the new audience, and they want to break away from the traditional aspect of things. So
Yes,
this what you just brought up on the screen there is very, very true, and it's been true for centuries. But just in a
correct.
short amount of time, we're seeing a dramatic change from that, because I don't think we'll get away from trees and green and health and things like that. I think that's pretty obvious one. But some of those outskirt colors aren't as traditional as they used to be, because what's happening with the internet and the way we're marketing ourselves these days, we're trying to find a differentiation, and colors are now becoming used in a way that, they weren't previously used, or not even just used. It was the fact that you've got the exposure. You know
And
what I mean? Like, yeah,
yeah, I agree, Chris. I agree. I thank you for bringing this particular part of the color conversation up, because there's a couple of reasons. Today's session, we're covering the basics of color psychology. And like basics with anything that you embark on and you start with, you understand the basics so that later on you're so good at mastering the basics that you can masterfully break some of the rules here and there. The example of, for example, we're riding a bike. We start riding a bike as little toddlers with our side wheels. We use those helpers so that we understand how balance works, how the coordination of our moving feet in a circular motion, and how our hands on the handlebars need to work together, so that later on we have mastered these principles. And some of us will go into BMX, some of us will go into road racing, some of us will go into freestyle, some of us will go into mountain biking. And in mountain biking, the rules are basically don't get killed. As long as you
yeah.
can keep your hands on the handlebars and the wheels spinning, you're doing well. But notice that some of the things that you were told as a toddler not to do are completely the opposite when you get on a mountain bike at high speed. Same with art. Picasso is the blatant example that everybody likes to say, I could have done that myself, or I'll get my kid to paint a Picasso. But very few people have ever seen Picasso's early drawings and the mastering the basics years of his career, where he drew endlessly of the topics such as bullfighting in Spain, dead natures, portraits, all of those things that we consider basic. And then he broke away with incoherency, mind you. But all the things that he learned, he was able to break away from. So today is the basics of color psychology. And what Chris is referring to very well is how some of the brands today are able to break away from the convention of what we've been conditioned to. And because of the speed of things these days and the internet and all of this, some brands are being very clever about how they use colors. Purple Bricks was an interesting real estate company that worked here in Australia for a while. And in the blue and trust and very stable environment of the real estate, Purple Bricks came along and threw literally a brick in that glass ceiling and shattered it to pieces, because they had a brand that was all about being fun, being right now, a little bit of a cowboyish attitude. Nevertheless, they got the attention of the market. So this is what Chris is referring to.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry about that little side segment there, but we do have to let's keep going. So what I guess I just touched on there was use of universal standards for colors. There are some things, even though I've said let's go change those things, these are the things that have been around for years. And when I'm talking about, sorry, years, decades, centuries, since humans were thinking about color. So let's talk about some of these things. So do you want to talk to traffic lights?
Very, very quickly. I don't need to talk to traffic lights that much. People know green means go, yellow is for caution, and red is don't go. Although in Spain, some of these conventions with the traffic lights just means that people accelerate more. There's a running joke that if you put a Barcelonian driver with a Madrid driver and both watch both see the the yellow light, it's a definite crash waiting to happen, because one will break and the other will go further, will go faster.
Yes. So healthcare signage.
Yes. It goes back to the safety, it goes back to the trust. Healthcare needs to instill trust, because you're not going to put your health in somebody's hands unless they evoke that trust from you. So blue naturally is used to indicate medical facilities, hospitals, and healthcare related signage for these reasons. On the danger side of things, old attention grabbing red and black is usually the combination that, again, also in nature, it means danger, and it could be a notice for you to approach with caution. Talking about the red belly, we're talking about snakes, we're talking about a number of toads. We all like to, or we are somewhat partial or friendly to frogs and toads that are green, but if we see one that is red, that's usually a very clear sign that you should not try to touch it with your uncovered skin. Then we get on to exit signs. The green, again, it's go. If you are in the middle of a cinema, a fire breaks out, the exit signs will immediately light up, and you've seen on the way in and on the way out throughout the entirety of your life when you've gone to all the cinemas.
Yeah.
When you walk through the corridor to get your seat, you will have seen the exit signs, and the same with the planes. So no explanation needed there. On to the next slide.
Yes. Alrighty, so let's change it to the screen, and there we go. Universal standards for color. Oh, you've got some other ones here.
The final ones, the warning symbols, yellow and black, and sorry. Yellow and black are widely used for construction. Big machinery is involved. Humans need to be close to this machinery, and sometimes the interaction does not always work in a flowing way or in a safe way. So symbols, signage, and cautioning about potential hazards needs to be present in the warning symbols that are used throughout construction sites. And then we finish off with environmental labels. Many countries use the green for labels or symbols that indicate environmentally friendly products or practices. Again, we've covered at extent the associated meaning to green.
Yeah. Just touching on that, we were talking about this yesterday about a client of ours that has used yellow in their branding in what they did. And I was saying to them, I know you're in certain industry, but when you use yellow with black and white the way you have, it looks like a warning sign. It looks like it's danger or be careful rather than trusting and likable. So there was an interesting conversation with that client about how we might have to look at how we use those colors with them and how they go about it so that they don't give off a warning signal just subliminally to people, that people start sort of questioning the product, the supplier, yes, before they even actually get to use them, because that color gave off a warning sign rather than a let's like you and love you, a happy feeling like what yellow can do. But they've used a particular yellow that triggers that warning sign. So yeah, just a good example of being careful of what colors you choose. We're going to go through this, the 5 steps of colors in your brand. Of using color in your brand, sorry. So firstly, define your brand identity. So understand the core attributes of your brand. Is it modern, traditional, playful, serious, luxurious, or is it eco-friendly? These are characteristics that will guide your color choice. Now, I think we went through this before when you had the colors on the screen. If we work with our clients, these colors and that color guide that we gave them earlier, without personal choice coming into it, with the things that we work through with our clients, we would have actually identified that they have a particular personality, not them themselves, but their brand. And
Mhm.
then these colors sort of self-choose themselves, like they make our job easier. But again, there's always rules to be broken. There's always a spectrum of things and reasons why you go certain pathways. But talk about why this matters to defining a brand's identity.
Knowing yourself and asking yourself a lot of questions is the best way that you have to give yourself the knowledge of what your brand really means. And this is what we do with our clients. We take them through an extensive questionnaire, and some of these questions are completely left field. We know that clients sometimes are not ready to answer those clients in a situation, but it's all good because it provides them with the ability to think at a level they have not done before. Colors are not as basic or not as immediate as we like to think that they can be. And because you just mentioned that uh, discovering a color may not mean that your favorite color is going to be adopted, but rather the consequence of you explaining to yourself and us what your brand is about, what the values that you represent are, what your communications aim to be, and what's the goals or the vision behind your company, then the self-selection of colors and that chromatic range has a consequence instead of a choice. It's deliberate, but it's indirect, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
No, that does. So, aware of time, so we're just going to keep moving through these today. So, understanding your audience preference. So, equipped with the knowledge of psychology behind colors and knowing your target audience, preferences and cultural connotations of color. We need to consider age, gender, geographic locations of your audience. So, be caution, as I joked about earlier, your favorite club is not a presence of table of color decisions. So, I think we just touched on that a little bit in what you just talked about as well, is that you need to understand who you're communicating with. We've given some great examples throughout this session up till now of that. So I think it's really obvious. If you understand who you're targeting, then some of these choices can be made easy for you as well. So we won't go too deep into that one. Now, I guess I'm going to read this out. Choose a dominant color. Select a dominant color that best encapsulates your brand's essence and resonates with your audience. This color can be a primary one used in your branding material, 2 at best, 3 at most. More than that, you're asking too much of your audience retention and from your own ability to produce materials, especially offline. So do you want to talk about this? Because even ourselves, we have 4 colors, if you don't count black and white, in ours. But the way we use them, as even today, we use white and pink because we're in our persona part of where color fits into our P8 framework. So we don't go with the entire 4 colors. We only use them subtly. We don't use them in a way that, you know, it's a rainbow effect. Like, we don't want that.
Correct. Well, if you look at the screen right now, you will see black shirts, you will see a black background, you will see a dominance of black over all the other colors. The colors that we use as secondary palette, and I don't want to say too much because we're going to visit that slide right away after this. It just speaks to the need of accessorizing the main dominant color, but that happens when the dominant color is established. Again, using Cadbury that we've already mentioned today, I say Cadbury and the purple flashes up in your mind. I say McDonald's and you will have a lot of red with a yellow M. I say specific brands, you will think of specific colors, and that's because that dominant color has been established very early on. As far as the production goes, this was more the case even so in the past. The last 5 to 10 years led to evolutions also in technology that allowed us to be a bit more flexible with how we produce the colors, and therefore the price of producing many colors has decreased significantly. Nevertheless, if you print, for example, an entire brochure or a book in one color, you will have a very different price tag than if you do with with lots of colors. Obviously, the colors are produced from the combination of the 4 main ones, but the moment you involve 4 cylinders of color in a printing process, you obviously have to pay for more than if you just include 1. So that's the basic explanation of why.
Yeah. So this next point is create a secondary palette. So like Robin to Batman, a secondary palette color palette serves as a complement to the primary dominant color of the brand. It is the function to enhance and expand the visual identity of the brand, offering versatility and allowing for diverse design applications. So adding to the emotional range and creating a hierarchy and maintain the brand's consistency. All of this produces higher brand recognition. So many of the clients we work with, the primary color we work with, we sometimes have to fight with them over the secondary color because they don't fully understand why it exists and what its power is. But when you use it really effectively, like I think we do with having black and white in a lot of our stuff with a color that's secondary that pops, it directs people's eyes to where you want them to go. It highlights, like in the way of digital we have these days, buttons become really important. And if you've got that breakaway color that can make it stand out, so if everything's a certain color and you use that secondary color for buttons, you then guide people to take action whenever they see that color, as one example.
That's correct. When we pick the secondary palette, we don't want to go crazy with the colors. The fact that we've mentioned coherence and brand recognition has a very statistically proven backed decision that you need to make in your brand and pick that and stick to that dominant color just allows enough space for the secondary color to introduce that variety that we need every now and again, but used coherently. Because if you use yellow one day, the next day you're going to go green, the next day you're going to go lilac, and the next day you're going to go all over the shop, and you lose that contrast, that association with the dominant color, that relationship will only blur the recognition of your brand in your audience's mind, which is why we have been so adamant about preaching about the importance of being consistent with it.
So moving on to the final point of the 5 is writing the Bible and stay true to your faith. So once you have all your colors and main assets in place, it's crucial to create a document that has everything pertaining to the brand and it's recorded in such a way that when it is handed over to anyone from social media marketers to printers, everyone knows exactly what to do, and more importantly, not to do with the color schemes. So it's something that's becoming, funnily enough, in the past, as we touched on earlier, it was always about what was going on in print land. So if you were doing brochures, this was something that people would design things, they would then give it to the printer, and the first thing the printer says is, okay, what color is that? And if you don't know that color, it's no use telling him it's red, it's green, it's blue, it's purple, whatever, because that's not going to help them. They need a specific color code, a particular, as I said, back in the day when they used to actually have to physically mix the paints, that's when this mattered. These days with digital, we've got a eyedropper, so we actually use it and then go from there. But most people don't have that luxury when they're doing things. And as touched on, I know straight away when I work with a new client, if they don't have this document in place, I know that this brand wasn't developed professionally, or 2, they didn't pay for the professional to get this stuff done, and we have to create it for them at a cost to them. So it's something you need to invest in, because like everything we've touched on today, if you have that document, you can create a consistent feel for your brand. And it doesn't have to be a 20-page, 100-page document. It actually can be a 1-page document, but keep it safe, keep it in a drawer, keep it consistent there. Make sure whatever you do, you email. The most important version of this would be what you're wearing, the uniforms that staff have. If you don't use the right colors, what you end up with is one batch is a certain color, the next batch is another color, and you end up with all sorts of with consistency. So just be mindful of that. I was talking because you obviously had some sound issues there, Sim, but do you want to add anything to the faith of the Bible of choice for color?
This Bible is it's a joke, but it is true, because if you stay true to that Bible, you will give yourself the cloning ability. and enter the Lord into this conversation. No, I'm kidding. What I mean is it serves as an onboarding document, because the moment your color, brand colors are registered very specifically with references to RGB, you can then pass that on to your social media team or your social media person, and they're going to be able to replicate your colors in such a way that they don't get confused with the competition's colors, for example. And this is just one of the examples. The other is with graphic elements. Like, you don't just say a bicycle. A bicycle can be represented in many ways. It could be a line art. It could be a depiction of a small child. It could be a highly detailed shadowed version of that representation. So the Bible is the brand manual. This is the thing that we jokingly refer to. This brand manual is of crucial importance so that you give yourself the ability to duplicate your knowledge and pass it on to somebody without it consuming your time. If you're the owner of a small business and you need to spend 10 hours explaining to your assistant how to create social media posts that are going to be on brand, you have a problem. Brand manual, the Bible, it solves that problem. Like Chris said, it doesn't need to be at 300 pages like NASA's, but it can be 2 to 3 pages, even sometimes 1 page, that has the main colors of the logo, the main secondary applications, your primary color palette, your secondary color palette, and your Canva designer should be able to adapt this very quickly and with consistency. Now, I'm going to leave this in a point where we're going to introduce next week's topic, because we've talked enough about the brand manual that now we have the ability to bring for next week's topic the brand manual as the conversation topic. But that's going to be next week. Let's wrap up today. Chris, take us to the coffee moment.
Coffee moment. All right. Let me go. So, color's psychological impact resonates deeply. So it influences emotions and decisions. In branding, it deliberately makes color choices a crucial one for conveying messages and shaping perceptions. By understanding the interplay between color and human perception, the brands gain insights into the audience's emotions, preferences, and enabling authentic connection. So colors aren't just visual, they are triggers to emotions. The synergy between color psychology and the branding fuels success by fostering genuine communication, captivation, and lasting relationships. So better color paints better profits. And I like that line. Well, so guys, look forward to seeing you next week when we are going to talk about the branding guidelines, and we're going to talk about the importance of that document to your brand and how we go about getting there. And we'll just dive a little bit deeper into why you need this document and why it's useful to have in your kit when it comes to developing brands. Do you have anything else you want to sign off on with what we're going to be talking about next week?
Well, I'm just going to leave people with a slight bonus at the end of this, because I understand that not everybody will have the psychology presence or the training to pick colors. With that in mind, I want to recommend people to go visit coolers.co. This is an online tool that is fantastic in creating schemes of colors that are harmonic and don't clash with each other. And you can very quickly, very easily establish your palettes there, where you pick your primary color, your dominant, and very quickly the system is going to spit back at you however many colors you need for the secondary. So give it a go at coolors.co, coolers.co, and I'm sure you will love that tool, because like I mentioned, it's going to make your work a lot easier and a lot quicker.
Cool. Fantastic. There you go. Little tip for how to go about choosing colors. All right. Well, guys, thank you for joining us this week. We really have enjoyed. As always, if you are anywhere in the world and you have watched this and you've had some thoughts, some feedback, we love to hear it. We would love to know what you were thinking and what you've taken away from it. Or if you've got any questions you'd like to work with us on with the P8 framework, we would love to have a chat with you. Otherwise, until next week, thank you for joining us, and we hope we have helped you amplify your brand. Take care. Bye.